Welcome to the MSP Owner Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brian Hoppe, a seasoned IT leader and entrepreneur with over 2 decades of experience in the managed services and IT industry. Brian is currently a strategic coach to MSP owners at Brian Hoppe Consulting. Brian has more than 20 years of experience in the IT services space. Brian was also the owner of an MSP called Unicom Technologies that he grew substantially and ultimately sold to General Informatics a few years ago. Brian's journey is a fascinating one, from becoming a systems admin to management to owner and now coach. So we're going to dive into Brian's background, his approach, and navigating the evolving IT services market and the pivotal decisions that impacted his career. So I'm excited to share his founding story and get insights from him as much as possible. So Brian, thanks for joining me on MSP Owner.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
I know. I'm excited for to really dig in. We know each other personally and through you've actually helped me in a number of different ways, including the assessment of my current MSP platform, DataTel, which was insanely valuable. So first of all, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So why don't we jump into hearing a bit about where you started? How did you get into the IT industry?
Wow. Well, I mean, we have to go way, way back. So I'm like one of the few people that I know that actually went to school for this stuff, right? So like I knew even back in high school that I wanted to be in technology. I was kind of the computer guy of the family and that kind of a thing. And so yeah, so I actually studied information systems in college, went to Baylor, and I actually did I learn a lot about actually how to do systems administration as part of my degree? Not really, but I did work at the Baylor computer store, so I learned a lot about about computers and how to build them, fix them, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I got the start, I would say, is there, and then. Yeah, I mean, pretty much straight out of school back in the early 2000s. I kind of went into the industry. Started working in a break fix shop, just 2 of us. I was working for the owner, and then and so that's kind of how I got the start. I could go and do a whole story, but
I'm curious about why. Why did you like the IT industry? Like it sounds like you had a proclivity when you were young to get in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that I just had I always tinkered with stuff. Like even as a kid, I would take stuff apart, like take apart my like remote control car and like completely break it, but just because I wanted to know what was inside and everything. And so I knew that I liked technology. I liked to work with technology. And that was pretty much it. And then I heard that, IT guys make a lot of money. And so that was that was the other thing. I was like, cool, I can make a lot of money and do something that's kind of fun. And I don't have to talk to that many people while I do it. So that's great too. But I was wrong about that. But that's another piece of the story. But yeah, I learned some development. I learned some some networking, all that kind of stuff, and found that I really enjoyed it, and that I could really get lost in the work, kind of get in that flow state, if you will, and where it's like time just flies by, and it's like, whoa, you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been working on this for a long time and having a good time and doing something productive and all that, and so. That's really, I mean, for me, I think that's why that's why I got into it and why I really enjoyed it while I was doing it.
Nice. And so you went to school for IT, and then your first shop that you joined, was that McLean Intelligent Solutions, or where did you start your career at?
Yeah, it was what would turn into McLean Intelligent Solutions. But yeah, it was a small 2-man shop. It was called JC Technology Group. And so, or actually there were 3 of us, went down to 2, back to 3. And then we just kind of grew from there. And then probably a year or 2 after I joined is when it was acquired by McLean. We were part of the government contracting type company called McLean Advanced Technologies for a number of years until about 2010, I believe. We split off into a separate entity, which was just the MSP, which was McLean Intelligent Solutions.
And that was the owner carved it out, or how exactly did that transaction work?
Yeah. Basically, just carved out of the government contracting entity. So that the other entity was really focused on development for the Department of Defense. They coded a large Army logistics system, and so it was just there were I don't know, several hundred people in that organization at one point, and of which we were a small portion, and it just made sense at that time to make it its own thing. So it was just carved out of that other entity.
So corporate carve out. And then at that point, did you get ownership in the company, or did ownership come later?
Technically no ownership in the company. We did have kind of a I can't remember what we called it, but some like a phantom stock kind of plan in that company, but it is was solely owned by the family, McLean family. And so at that point, no formal ownership, but executive and on the leadership team and all of that. So
got it. And then how big, just for size or scale, was how many employees was it when that carve out happened?
I'll give you my best estimate. I think it was probably in the 15 to 20 employee range, and in around 2010. My memory is, the older I get, it's just going away a little bit, little by little. But no, I think
happens.
that's probably directionally accurate anyway. Somewhere in that range.
Cool. So what was your experience like there? It sounds like you got most of your operating chops developed there over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. What was that time frame, and what did that look like work-wise for you?
Yeah. So we started as a network engineer, SysAdmin, that kind of a thing. I did a good bit of development for a while as well, and kind of I would say evolved with the company. As managed services was becoming a thing in the, around 2005 to 2007, really learning about, hey, here's what people are doing. Here's what managed services looks like versus break fix, and just kind of developing into more of a leadership role. So I took over operations, kind of leading all of the engineering team. And then we switched probably in like wholesale to managed services around 2007. So from a break fix model, so we transitioned all of our clients over. We transitioned out several clients as part of that, and then became kind of a full managed services shop somewhere in that 2007 range. And that was a whole adventure in and of itself. But kind of learning, hey, here is, starting to learn how, mature MSPs actually run a business, right? And so, a lot of my learning was kind of hands-on on the job, talking with other people. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Doing user groups for like ConnectWise user groups and things like that at that time. And that was...
so you utilized a bunch of peer groups like ConnectWise, IT Nation, or what were the groups that you were involved in back then?
Yeah. So in around the same time that we carved out the company, around 2010, we joined Evolve peer groups, or well, at the time it was HTG. And then it later became Evolve, but that was a pretty transformative step as far as being able to learn from others who were kind of ahead of us, right? And that's one of I point to the three big things that were like key in my in the company's growth and my personal growth as an executive in the MSP space. And that's probably like the first big thing that we did that when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that made all of the
that
difference.
Was the defining moment that changed the business and your career.
It was huge. Yeah. It was huge. So And I think on a couple of fronts. I mean, I think one, just having other people who know what's going on in your business and can give you that advice and accountability and all of those things. And then the other huge thing that you got as part of that was benchmarking, financial benchmarking through service leadership. And they are still to this day, they've got thousands of companies that they get data for every month. You get to look at your data versus everybody else, understand exactly where you're off from where the best in class performers are, and pull the right levers in order to get to that best in class profitability based on all of that data. And that, as far as my financial chops and all of that was a huge piece of that as well, being part of the peer group too. So
yeah, it sounds like you were really data driven and best practice metrics driven pretty early on in the transition, which is not surprising why you and the companies you're associated with were successful.
I think that was it, and it was part of the learning process, right? Like, I didn't inherently know any of that stuff, but by putting myself around other people who really did, it was like, oh, okay, I'm I'm gonna learn this stuff pretty quickly. And it starts to make it starts to be like, I don't know how I ever ran a business without that data, the metrics, the understanding what maturity looks like, based on what the best in class are doing, all of those things. I mean, it's like, how did I ever do it without all that? But that a lot of people do still to this day, and whether by choice or because they just don't know what else is out there. I mean, you can still have a successful MSP without it, but I think that it's like a cheat code. So.
Yeah. 100%. And peer groups, obviously. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah, 100%.
Hi, I'm Ben Tigelaar, the host of MSP Owner Podcast and the CEO of DataTel, an IT managed service provider with 35 employees. The mission of this podcast is simple: to have authentic conversations with IT owners about their journey, how it started, the challenges they faced, and where they're going next. Every episode, I personally walk away with a new actionable item to strengthen my own business. But a quick word about my company, DataTel. We are actively acquiring MSPs who align with our service and culture. So if your company is generating between $1 and $10 million of revenue, I want to talk to you. But wait, you're probably thinking, why me and why DataTel? First is, I get you. I understand the challenges MSP owners face, being one myself, feeling overworked, overwhelmed, constantly being on call, struggling to bring in new business. I have the solutions and people in place to address these pain points. Second is culture. We run our business on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has been transformative for our employees and clients alike. I believe that building a great company comes down to finding and retaining great people who are in the right seats. Everything else is noise. If any of this resonates, it probably means we're a fit and we should be having a conversation. Until then, let's get back to the show. Walk me through the transition from McLean to starting Unicom. How did that develop behind the scenes? And I assume there was probably some pain points you're having along the line where you wanted to do something new. Can you talk to me about that, experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think at some point in there, it got to where, probably peer groups were part of this, where it's like, yeah, I see all these other owners who are, building something for themselves and for their legacy, and as time went on, I was like, hey, I think I've figured out how to do this. I think I could probably do this for myself, and so. So I kind of, set out on that journey, and it was a series of steps. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do or exactly how I was going to do it. But I did know I kind of wanted to move towards that. Right. So I left McLean in 2015. And in 2016 is when I partnered up with a friend of mine, at the time. And and so he was running a credit union software company, and kind of wanted to get into the IT support part of things because it was kind of where they stopped, right? They would install the systems and support it and all that, but whenever there'd be a problem with the network or that kind of a thing, they kind of couldn't do anything about it. And so he was always like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And so we kind of got together on that, and bought a small, local MSP IT company, and then kind of ran that as a kind of a sister company of the credit union software company. And so I was CTO at the software company and running the small MSP for quite a while. And just growing that slowly in kind of the credit union space. So we had that vertical market.
So
right?
the MSP was initially kind of a generalist, locally focused MSP,
Mhm.
and then you transitioned to have more of a niche focus within the credit union space.
You've got it. Yeah. So and that's obviously an evolution, right? Because you don't just drop all your non niche customers, but so we still had other customers along the way, but predominantly our marketing and outreach and everything was to credit unions through through kind of the partnership we had and spending time where credit unions CEOs spend time and all of those kind of things, right? So that's what so we did that for a couple of years, and then kind of started into a further acquisition strategy, right? So we and at the time it was not Unicom, it was much longer Data Systems Technology Solutions, which is a mouthful, right?
Nice, nice, yeah.
Yep. And so when we acquired Unicom, we decided to take that name, right? Because it was actually larger than we were at the time. And so, and liked the name better. And so we said, hey, let's become Unicom. And so that's what we did. And so, yeah, so that happened that acquisition was in 2018, where we found another company that was not too far away geographically, but had clients kind of all over the area, Texas mainly, but also into Louisiana and Oklahoma and some other areas, and really focused in banking. So it was a very very sweet spot for us because we were like, hey, we're already doing credit unions, these guys are doing banking, makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to kind of
wow. So it was both industry and geographically consistent with your current business. Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of like a unicorn.
That's very, very attractive. How did you find that particular company? Did you go out and solicit them, or did they come to you, or how did that work?
Yeah, we were actually working with a buy-side advisor at the time. So we had a company on retainer, and they would go out and search for the deals and kind of bring us deals. We do kind of a meet of the owners. Kind of figure out, hey, is there some potential synergy here, those kind of things, and then after looking through, I don't know, a dozen of those, we we found stopping with several companies, we found one that really worked for us.
Cool. And then size wise, at that point, 2018, how big was the company employee count, or revenue wise? It sounds like Unicom was larger than your base business, so you must have more than doubled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were probably, we were small, under $1 million, 7 people, 6.5, 7.5, somewhere around there. And then added probably another 12 on top of that to be like a 20-ish person company. And so it was I don't know, double to triple the size of what we were at the time. So not highly recommended, by the way, for people if you haven't done acquisitions before. I think I felt good about it because I've been through the process many times, understood what to look for, what it was going to take to actually integrate, and a lot of the pitfalls that can happen as part of an acquisition if you don't do it the right way. And so so that was
what are some of those things? I can see you smiling. You're probably thinking like you've got a couple examples.
Yeah, no, and actually a lot of it. So we did, we probably did 3 or so, in the previous MSP, and then I also just got to watch a lot of peers do acquisitions and or mergers, and so some of the things where it's like, hey, we're gonna merge. Merging becomes a big problem a lot of times, because it's like, okay, well, if we're not doing the exact same thing with the exact same systems, and we don't have the same contracts and the same way we deal with our employees and all of that, there's going to be major conflicts. And so if you're trying to do a committee of like, hey, we have 3 owners, we're all equals, and we're all going to decide together who's doing things the best, and then adopt that way of doing things, it doesn't really work very well. Not only on the not only is it inefficient, but it's also quite or it's conflict laden, right? And so everything takes longer. You do a worse job servicing your clients. You start to lose clients. There's and there's a lot of other negative consequences that come from all that, right? So knowing like, hey, here, this is the way we're going to do things, and there's one person making the decisions about that, and having a plan in place for those things to happen. Those are kind of the that's what's at the top of my mind anyways, as far as that goes. And then just having the experience of having done it before, you learn so much in that process, that it's hard to overstate. Like you can't, it's always like you can't learn it by osmosis. You have to actually go through it in order to learn what not to do.
From a client perspective, when you're integrating, you're changing systems, you're changing processes, you're changing the way you do business with your clients a lot of the times, right? So how did you handle that as you, it sounds like maybe you didn't have as much of an impact because Unicom had better best practices because they were bigger, or no?
In a lot of cases, yes. In a lot of cases they did. Right. Because we were, in the previous one, still in the process of kind of putting together the platform, if you will, right? And so it was like, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on over here that's actually much better. So let's just stick with that. We can throw our clients on there, easy cheesy, and that's a lot of what happened. And then also, then there were some systems that it was like, hey, this, the PSA is not really set up well anyways, and so let's just go ahead and do a new implementation of it and do it right the first time, so that it's not, you don't have this old cobbled together thing that doesn't really work anyways. You get it done right and put in place, and then you're kind of off to the races with that. So
how did you handle it employee wise? Because it's you're meshing 5 with 15 to 20 people. The small guy is now, owning and running the company. I'm sure there was some interesting employee things that happened. You have anything you could share there?
Yeah. I mean, I think with team, it's, it's about spending the time and getting to know the people, right? Like it was still at a size where I could spend time with each and every person and understand where they're coming from, and what are they passionate about? What do they want to do? Are they on board with our culture, with our values, or at least what we aspire to be as a kind of a new combined organization? And the reality of it is that usually not everybody wants to go along for the ride, right? So there was kind of there was a key person who didn't want to, and didn't essentially, you kind of transfer employment from one entity to the other, and just didn't want to. And so, okay, Well, great. We're going to have to figure out how to backfill that, and make sure that that skill set is covered. And
When that person left or indicated they were going to leave, what was what was the decision making process, and how did you feel in those moments? Did you feel like you were exposed, or you were like, I can handle this? Like, what was your mindset back then?
Yeah, I think at the time, I mean, I think I was really nervous about it, right? Because you're talking to, I mean, really, you're just talking with the owner before a transaction. I mean, at least in this scenario, I think I did talk with one or two of the team members there. This person who didn't want to come along was a key technician, like very high level, tier 4 probably type technician, and had a lot of valuable experience. And so I was like, wow, we're losing our top tier skill here. How much of a problem is this going to be? And yeah, so I think I was really nervous about that. And I was like, well, how, are we going to be able to kind of make this work? Was
the owner staying on as well?
Yes, actually. Yeah. The owner did.
Okay. That probably helped a little bit.
Yeah, it helped a lot. And he was fantastic, by the way. I mean, he was getting to retirement age, so he was like, "Hey, I want to make sure that this is good, this is secure, all of that, and I want to stick around for a couple of years." And I'm like, "Fantastic!" Hopefully that works out well and everything. And it doesn't always, work out well. A lot of times they just end up wanting to move on after a few months or a year or something like that, but. He actually ended up staying on for more than 2 years, and sticking around and continuing to help out. So, a lot of the relationships and all of those things, keeping up the relationships and helping to keep clients happy and all of those things, he was, really instrumental as part of that, in the continuity across the transition period. So I think if he hadn't stuck around, it would have definitely been harder for sure.
Fascinating. So you acquired the company. It sounds like you had one active partner, right? A primary partner, and then you had this more passive owner who was ultimately going to leave. So you had 3 owners in the group.
I had a partner, I mean, essentially a silent partner. He was not involved in the business at all. We would talk every 2, 3, 4 weeks, and that was about it. It wasn't, he had his own thing that he was running and all of that, which is great to have a, kind of a financial partner like that who's like, hey, just tell me how great things are going. I don't need to know all the details. Obviously we'd collaborate on big decisions or those kind of things, but other than that, it was me, running everything. So.
Nice. So you were 20-ish employees, and then now you're running this thing. You're saying, "Hey, I want to grow this."
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like 2018 was when the acquisition happened. You probably built the foundation from there. But what did 2019 to ultimately when you sold? Can you walk me through that period?
Yeah. Well, so probably year one. Year one was a lot of integration. And some changes, brought on an ops leader, switched PSAs, those kind of things. So it's like the combination of trying to grow it, but really trying to stabilize, right, for that first year. So 2018 through probably, that probably happened August 2018. Then you get to about a year out, and we were adding clients relatively consistently at that point. But I think the big thing was that we were also becoming more efficient as we went, and so we didn't need to add headcount as we were growing, right? So we were growing in efficiency, in revenue and efficiency, without having to add headcount, and that was fantastic.
That's unusual. How did you do both grow and stay efficient? Was it a people thing? Was it process? Like, what do you attribute that uniqueness to?
Yeah,
special?
yeah. So one, I'll point to two things. One, great, fantastic ops leader, and he was really focused on automation and efficiency, right? So it's like a constant process of, okay, what are the issues that are taking up the most time, and how do we automate the heck out of this so that we can save on hours, right? So it's looking at the hours, looking at what's taking those hours, and then saying, okay, how can we make this not a thing anymore? Okay, great. We can script for this and put something in place. So okay, this is no longer an issue, and you're consistently doing that. So that's one piece. The other piece is that we implemented a culture of documentation. We talked about it often, right? And so the thing was, and this was stolen from Nigel Moore. I don't know if you know him, but it's like, hey,
Tech Tribe.
yeah, Tech Tribe, yep. And but it's like, hey, at any given point in time, you're either documenting something, you're documenting a process, you're following the process, or you're updating the documentation of that process at any given time, right? So whatever you're doing, there should be something written down for it. If there's not, you should write that down. And then we had somebody who was, kind of the documentation guru, so to speak. So it's like all of our internal processes were written out for, hey, here's how you do this thing, and it's done consistently. And so there's less rework and just becoming more and more efficient as time goes on with that. And and I think by the time we sold, we had 700-800 of those kind of process documents out there in the library, something like that. I'm not sure of the numbers,
Wow.
exactly, but yeah. So, and by the way, I didn't create any of them, probably personally, right? But our team did, and that was kind of part of we made it part of the culture.
How did you start that? How did you start to make it part of the culture?
I think it's what I just told you, having that conversation on repeat over and over and over again, right? And it's the same thing, right? So we'd have a team meeting every other week, but it's the same thing with our core purpose, our BHAG. Here's where we're going. Our core, our values, our behaviors. Like, we would talk about it all the time, and like I would talk about it till I'm blue in the face, until everybody actually could like remember. Like, how many teams do you know where it's like they can actually remember all of your core values if you asked them, right? And I think,
Yep.
I mean, if I popped quizzed people, I mean, probably not everybody could remember all of them, but they could probably mostly remember them because we talked about it all the time. We made it part of the culture so that so that people knew and understood. And it's the same thing with the documentation. It's like, hey, what did you do? What documentation did you update today? And continually building that library and yeah. So I think it's just like repetition, because often as leaders we we think, hey, well, I already told you to do that, so you should just remember and do it because I said that's what we're doing. But I find that the repetition, until you feel like, man, I've said this 1,000 times. Once you feel like you've said it way too much, then people start to get it, right? And then the
100%.
more and more you reinforce it, the better it gets kind of embedded into the team and in the culture.
I've personally been guilty of doing kind of something similar, but creating SOPs, creating a structure, and then not getting the team to actually adopt it. Right, then it just sits on the shelf, and then it becomes old very quickly. So that's one of the tried and true challenges that basically every business faces.
I think you're right.
So you grew, you focused in the financial services space, as it sounds like most of your growth came from there. Can you, I'm curious about when you decided to sell Unicom, right? You'd spent, sounds like 4 or 5, 6 years running Unicom. How did you come to that situation? What drove it?
Right. Yeah. So And nowadays I joke with a lot of my buddies who've sold. It's you don't choose the time chooses you, right? So that's what happened to me. I think the process kind of got kicked off because my business partner was looking at the possibility of selling his other business that I wasn't a part of, and somehow our financials got into the hands of some private equity people, and so that kind of well, how, because he shared them, right? But that's how the process got kicked off. And I was like, okay, well, we have like 5 to 10 more years of doing this before we get where we want to go. Like, should we, do we really want to even entertain this? Is it just a distraction, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, entertained it. And yeah, and so it became a process of, hey, we ended up talking to 2 different private equity groups as part of it, and having conversations over the course of a summer, probably a good 60 to 90 days between like May, June, July, August, something like that. And finally and came to a deal that was like, yeah, I think this could really make sense for us to move forward. And so, yeah, I mean, it was probably like not, specifically like, hey, now we're ready to sell. Let's go out and, let's go out and.
It wasn't a formal
buyers.
process. You kind of opportunistically approached, and you're like, oh, maybe we should check this out.
Yeah, yeah. And this was the like just post-COVID time. Things are starting to come back and all of that. So this was, probably mid 2021 when we started having those discussions, and then we were off to the races at that point. Yeah.
So, I mean, it does strike me as interesting as, you're not at retirement age, or at least it doesn't look like it. You look like a very young, strapping lad. So that is something interesting is mid, I would say like mid-career people who ultimately sell their business, right? Their motivations might be different than someone who's retiring. So, right. Well, how did you come to that? Because, I know a lot of owners think they have a number in mind when what they think their business is worth, or, they need to get a certain amount of money for retirement. What was going through your head given where you're at in that part of your career?
Yeah. I think a few things were, number one, I'll give you reasons that I, decided to move forward with it. Right. So one was, I wanted to be a part of a larger MSP. Right. So, the company was probably, I don't know, 8 times the size of ours that bought us, something like that. 5 to 8 times the size. And so being a part of something bigger and seeing like, hey, how does it work at bigger scale, right? Well, what I found was on that is it's actually not too much different. There's some different things that you do. You have different resources and all of that, but guess what? The numbers work the same. You serve people in a lot of the same ways, but there's obviously key differences, but anyways, yeah. So working for a larger MSP, getting chips off the table was a big thing for me. Of being like, hey, actually, this is kind of my first big event, so to speak. And so it was like, hey, yeah, this is gonna enable me to do some things that I would like to do. Take some chips. You wanted to get some.
You want to get some. You want to get some score on the scoreboard. You wanted to
right
to get that first big win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a huge part of it for me, and and then while also being able to roll over equity into the new larger private equity backed entity that's ideally was going to produce a multiple on that that's that equity that's left in there, right? So I think those were some key things. I think there were some good opportunities for my team members, and I chose a place that I felt like would be a good home for the team, and and so I think those would be kind of some of the big factors for me anyways, as I'm
Any
thinking about
any
it.
days do you ever regret selling for any reason?
I think there's, some pieces, like some things that I miss, right, about my business, especially my team, and the leadership team that we had in place was fantastic. I mean, I loved working with the people that I worked with, and so yeah, I definitely miss that from time to time, and still keep in touch regularly with a lot of people that were on that team, but all in all, it's like, would you go back and undo it? No, I mean, like, I wouldn't. And I'm thankful for what it was, and glad to be doing what I'm doing now. So
Nice. Well, good transition. Really interested to hear about how your consulting and coaching efforts have been going. That was something that, when someone sells, they have to also ask themselves, what am I going to do next? And I'm curious about what was the answer to that question right after you sold, and how did it turn into this consulting and coaching engagement?
right, yeah. So yes, I mean, I actually, as part of it, I transitioned into a leadership role at the acquiring company. So I essentially ran our Texas, Texas or Western market region, and we did a few acquisitions as part of that, and at the end of the day, I think I figured out I wasn't good at having a boss anymore. So that was it had been a while since I had somebody that I reported to. And then just realizing, like, hey, there's this dream that I've kind of had inside of me for a long time. And then having the time, resources, runway to actually pursue that, right? And so, I stayed for a year and a few months after the acquisition, and then took a little bit of time off, a month or so, and then kind of launched out into this, right? So
A month,
yeah,
Brian.
yeah, I know. Isn't
A
that late?
month. Come on.
The longest I'd ever taken off of anything before, right? Like, the longest I'd taken off before that, I think, was like 10 days, in like my whole career. Right. So I felt like it was like amazing. And but now, like, now what I'm doing, it feels like one big vacation because it's just so much fun. So, I think so, but yeah, I just took a month off. And I pointed back to, like, one of the things that we did kind of relatively early on was we got an executive coach for the leadership team that when I was back at McLean. And that experience working with it was Hardin Byers, the guy that was my coach at the time. So transformative for me at that point. I was like, I'm going to do this one day. I'm going to be like, I'm definitely, I'm not like Hardin, but he's really, really good. But I'm like, I'm helping people in the same way, and that's the fulfillment that comes with that is just can't overstate. The being able to kind of move forward with that dream that I had for probably over 10 years. At that point when I started doing this is it's just been fantastic. So
Can you explain what your coaching business is?
Yeah, 100%. So the majority of the work that I do is working one-on-one with MSP owners to essentially help them grow themselves and help them grow their business. Right, those are the two things. I work with about right around 20 MSP owners right now, and we meet on a ongoing cadence, and spend time working on the key things in their business and building themselves as a leader. The biggest thing I find when I have conversations, and I've had conversations with over 100 MSP owners this year, is that the biggest hindrance to their company growing is looking at them in the mirror. And if you can find that means that it's you, right? Like if you're the owner, like your business is optimally set up to produce exactly the results that it's producing. And unless something changes, then it's going to continue producing the same results that it's been producing. And a lot of the time, the change that needs to happen is in the owner themselves, right? Because obviously the owner is responsible for all the decisions that have been made for the business to be exactly where it's at right now. And so we look at we look at everything from leadership to strategy, vision, execution, maturity, financials, all of those things to really help and at the end of the day, it's like, hey, let's figure out how to produce more enterprise value for you and help you achieve your personal financial goals as well as your company valuation goals. And so that's probably a nutshell of the work that I do with owners.
So my company, DataTel, we run on EOS, or Entrepreneurial Operating System. Do you utilize a specific operating system? You've created your own, or how does that function?
Yeah. So I do an business operating system implementation. It is not EOS. It is probably similar. It's similar in a lot of ways, but we run on a different cadence and that kind of a thing. So it's kind of a custom made business operating system, but guys, created by and implemented by guys who used to run EOS and maybe didn't want to join up with the the franchise model and
one of those. Gotcha.
So, but yeah, and we specifically tailor for MSP owners, like so it's more so consultative as well, we're a little more embedded in your business than like an EOS implementer would be. But yeah, so I do that as well.
Very cool. I'm a huge advocate of coaching and peer groups, and it's just had such a huge impact on my business specifically, and unlocked me in many different ways. I mean, I'm in 3 different peer groups, and we've got an EOS coach and implementer as well, and it's been transformative for us and my team. So it is really interesting meeting other owners who haven't stepped into that world. They might have been an owner for 15 years and they've never done anything like it. And I'm like, part of me shaking my head like, man, you are missing out on the special sauce. And it makes work a lot more fun, but also I don't have anything to sell. So, but no, that's really cool. I'm sure your clients get a ton of value from you. I mean, I specifically got a ton of value from you as I was assessing my acquisition of DataTel in an industry that I hadn't been in at all. I had no experience. So I relied on someone like Brian to help me. So that's cool. I appreciate the help though, by the way.
Absolutely, man. I love it. It's so fun. It's like, I just love doing it. So I'm glad it's helpful.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story, man. And hopefully we'll have you on in the near future, or as you do more things for more clients. I'm sure you'll have a lot more stories to tell.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'd love to. I'll always love to come back whenever it makes sense, and any places that I can add value, the more the better. So glad to be here with you, man, and great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Sid.